Hello everybody, it's AJ back again with another monster video. This time I'm going to be covering the Xorn, pronounced Xorn, X-O-R-N. Kind of sounds like porn. Oh, we didn't need to see that. Okay, ignore that image. Okay, so the Xorn are native to the elemental plane of Earth. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the elemental plane of Earth, since this is one of the first creatures which is purely elemental. I'm going to touch on what the elemental plane of Earth is and is not. So, first of all, what is a Xorn? It's a challenge rating 5 creature. It speaks Terran. It is intelligent. It's got an intelligence of 11, wisdom of 10, and charisma of 11. And it's of a neutral alignment, so it's not evil. It's just hungry. And it's stuck on a plane of existence. If you've encountered it on the mortal plane, prime material plane, then you've met it basically in an alien environment for itself. It's not comfortable. It is a native of the elemental plane of Earth, where food and resources are plentiful. So when it's on the mortal plane, it's hungry because it's very hard to find the gems and precious metals that it subsists on in the mortal realm in the Underdark. And it's very treacherous and dangerous here for it. So yeah. So they will be hungry and they're motivated to survive, and to eat and to thrive and propagate and to get home. And they will plead and negotiate and bargain their way to doing that. And if that doesn't work, then motivation of survival kicks in and they will hurt and harm in order to steal to eat, basically. So they're not evil, they're just motivated by survival. And of course, it's difficult for them to communicate with terrestrial creatures because they speak in Terran, which would be a series of thrums and vibrations and deep grinding sounds, which can travel easily through rock and other solid surfaces. Yeah, so Terran is like a rumbling sound. It's deep infrasound. And if a human was speaking Terran, they would basically be drumming or banging on things or making deep booming sounds as best they can to make things vibrate. Otherwise, the other people who are elemental wouldn't be able to understand them. Okay, so they have the ability to earth glide, and this is a property of creatures of elemental earth where they treat earth as a medium of like we would move through air, they move through unnatural rock. So once rock has been separated and worked and cut into stones and masonry and things like that, it's difficult for them to move through, so they have to burst through it. But natural rock is perfectly easy for them to just merge with and travel through without leaving a trace. So you can't tell a Xorn is there or has been there by any disturbance of natural stone, but there might be chips or breaks or bashes around doorways and things like that where it's run into an obstacle it didn't expect. They have stone camouflage, which gives them an advantage on dexterity stealth checks made to hide in rocky terrain, or any terrain that looks exactly like rock. And they can sniff out any gems or coins or precious metal that within 60 feet of it. They can smell it like a nice tasty hamburger, and they will seek it out because they will be hungry. They have a multi-attack of claws and bites. As you can see, they have 3 arms and a large maw at the top of their head. They can see in all directions because they have a trilateral symmetry, where they point in all 3 different directions and they can see all around them. So they can claw with 3 claw attacks and make 1 bite attack. They've got an armor class of 19, natural armor. They're incredibly dense and heavy. It's like picking up a rock filled with lead. They are very heavy. So you could also say that if a Xorn launched itself into the air and dropped on somebody, it would do the same damage as a boulder twice the size of its body. Incredibly damaging. Of course, they wouldn't want to do this because they are vulnerable to bludgeoning damage. They are resistant to piercing and slashing damage from non-magical weapons that aren't adamantine. So if you have a pickaxe or something like that, they're going to shrug it off. It's going to be very hard going, and arrows and things are almost useless. But if you lay into them with a simple ordinary wooden club, you're going to start breaking them, and they don't like it. They have dark vision out to 60 foot, trem sense out to 60 feet, and passive perception of 16. So they're quite aware of their environment. They've got a huge constitution of 22 and a strength of 17. They are they're powerhouses, engines of destruction, and they've got a dexterity of 10, so they're pretty capable. They can walk along on their three stumpy legs at a speed of 20, and they can burrow at a speed of 20, so they basically move along fairly slowly. They've got 73 hit points, and as I say, that 19 natural armor class is very high. So yeah, they're not overly dangerous. They're just they're tanks, you know. So they're quite capable of looking after themselves. Now, the interesting thing about Xorn is that because they are of a neutral alignment, they could possibly strike up a deal with a dwarf, or a dwarven mining company, and say, okay, you sniff out the precious metals, and we will feed you a portion of non-precious material that we get. Just leave the gem quality stones for us, and you can take the rest. You can take the slag. So they will then sniff out valuable goods that the dwarves will then mine directly to. This makes sense. Of course, the greed of the dwarves may have them come a cropper of the Xorn's sense of fair play, and Xorn will probably react nastily to somebody who turns on them, who double crosses them and starves them of food. And they're going to get very sick of eating copper and things like that. They'll want a nice juicy salad with their steak for sure, and go for some diamonds or something like that. And it's probably going to end in tears, but you could see it working after a fashion. Now, the material plane, the elemental plane of Earth is home to a lot of different creatures. So we've got ropers and elementals, demons, Galabdur, that sort of thing. Now, if you think of the elementals as primarily spiritual creatures, energy creatures that are moving through Earth as a medium, so their body is ephemeral. It's made up of the Earth stuff. So much like an air elemental is an intelligence which is animating the air. Earth elementals is an intelligence and energy, a spirit that is animating the rock. So they move through the rock like an ocean, or like a medium. So they see their plane quite differently to what we do. We just see obstacles, rocks. They see ocean, or a clear blue sky, or some such thing, but in their terms. So they see a field of vibration, a field of a medium of travel, and that has got food and things like that floating through it, that they move freely through. And of course, being the elemental plane of Earth, it's got massive resources of minerals, metals, crystals, that sort of thing. So that in their natural environment, the Xorn have a plentiful supply of food, and there would be billions of them. They would be dining upon fields of crystals thousands of miles across. They would be traveling like herds of bison, and then they're an intelligent species, so they've probably got towns and wagon trails and trade routes and things like that, and they would have just as complicated as a life as a human being would, because they're of a comparable intelligence. And yeah, they make their home in this fantastical environment. So when they come over to the material plane, it's like us walking over into the Shadowfell, very poor on resources and very harsh for their lifestyle. So they're desperate, and they'll resort to violence to take what they need. So yeah, that's basically the motivation of the Xorn. Now, of course, the elemental creatures, if you look at them from a perspective of an energy being, they are very alien. They don't have normal biology as we see it. They don't have veins and tendons and the mechanics of movement that we do. And so to our perspective, it's like inanimate objects have suddenly become animated and become part of the body and moving around of their own accord, where to them it's just they have animated this stuff that is the medium that makes up their world. So their perspective of themselves is quite different to ours. And of course, if you're in the elemental plane of Earth, there's not only are there chasms and things like that, I mean, there's plentiful supply of water and air and things there as well, because some areas would be solid rock, but for the most part, you're not going to be adventuring in those sort of areas. You're going to be in places where it's surface-like conditions, or caverns and huge seas, underground seas and things like that. Of course, there is no overground, there is no sky. On the occasion that you do feel like you're walking across an open terrain with sky above you, it's a black chasm up above you because it's one huge cavern. It just happens to be a pocket of elemental air that's found its way in there. And of course, there's boundaries and crossovers to various worlds in various places in the elemental plane of Earth as well. And of course, the abyss is somewhere nearby, so the place is usually crawling with a few ostracized demons or their ilk wandering around and predating upon things which just happen to become lost there in the caverns, or whatever. So yeah, there's amazingly huge creatures, huge spirits which infest this domain. Elementals of gigantic size and power that move the landscape themselves, mountain ranges that are alive, sort of thing. And also tiny weeny little things. So you may have pebbles which go wandering around like flocks of rats or sparrows or something like that, or floating rocks that are like jellyfish floating through the sea. Pretty inert and they don't really care, but you may be caught up in their tendrils and they may find you interesting morsel, not really worth the bother, but you may have some iron in your bones that they particularly crave. Who knows? But for the most part, you're not of that realm. You're poisonous to most elemental earth creatures, and they're just not interested in you. You're made up of stuff they can't use. You're an object in their way, a bit of slag, a bit of fluff, a bit of detritus that they're just happy to ignore for the most part. But you may be crushed or killed in the wayside as they go about their daily business, completely unaware of your intelligence and the fact that you're a stranger in a strange land. So yeah, Xorn, interesting creatures, all sorts of uses, and thanks for the suggestion.